Welcome back. In the previous video, we just lay out this component on the screen as we see right now. So like I said in my previous video, I'll be talking about styling, but we will talk deeply about styling in the upcoming video. So in this video, you are going to find a way of managing states in React Native. So let's get started. If you have worked with React.js for the web, and this is a requirement for this video, so I assume that you are familiar with React Usesate, but if you don't, let me explain one more time so that you'll be familiar with that. As you can see, for the state of our application right now, you want to display all to-dos on our application. So this end up to ask ourselves about how to manage these states. And lucky to us, React Native gives us a nice hook called Usesate. And Usesate is a way of temporary holding states or storing states in your various components. So for this app component, we are going to store the states or to-dos inside this Usesate. So we can describe Usesate as a database like that. Okay, in a layman's view, we can say Usesate is like a database where you store data, right? But this one is a temporary way. So Usesate is a way of managing state in components like that. So let's make use of that. And Usesate gives us two things. So let's call this one, let's call the Usesate as that, as a function. And when you call this function, we get two things back, all right? And you're going to make use of array destruction. If you know array destruction, let me quickly explain to you with that. Let me write down the code first, and then let me explain to you why is that. So for array destruction, we can grab this one from Usesate, and the first one is what? Is the state, the value that holds the initial state of your application. So let me call this one to do item, right? And the function that we get back from this one is called set to do item, like that. So this function takes in one argument called initial state, for now empty string. Why not an array or object? Because what you are getting from this text input is just a single string, right? That's why we save it as what? As a string or empty string, like that. So let me quickly brief you about how destruction of array works. So let me quickly lay down this one. Let me have this one say const, and let me make this one, let me say a and b equal to array, and let me say true or false, like that. So for array destruction, the first one represents the first index, and the second one represents what? The second index. So behind the scene, this Usesate is a function, right? And we are going to grab only two pieces from this state. So one will be the to-do item, and the false will be what? The function. These names can be anything, a and b. So right now, when I console log, let me console log a and b, console.log, let me call this one a, and let me comma b, and let's see, we will get a for, make it separately for you to see, and then let me make this one a here, b here, and then a here. Save it, and let's see what we have inside the console. As you can see, the first one is true and the second one is false. The same thing applies to Usesate. We get these two things coming back when you call this function, like that. All right, so now we have a way of managing that piece of state, right? So now we have to bind this state to our input field. Because of that, we have a prop called value, right? And this value takes what we get back, what we have in our state, and then we put as initial value. So let me call this one to do item. So for now, let's look at, we have nothing here at the moment, right? So for initial state, when you make this one, let me say teaching, we will see that the test input right now will have what? Teaching as initial stage, as we can see, but you want it to be dynamic. So we are going to bind whatever we type in, and then we set what we type in into state, right? We have this one, and this function is going to update this state. So we are going to find a way. Where are we going to get dynamic data from? If on the test input, right? And where are we getting it from? We are getting it from this unchanged test input and the value. So if you remember, anytime you type in something like that, you're not buying, don't worry about that, because we have been triggered. So we can grab this one and then put it into state. That is why we're going to pass that function here. Instead of just console log to the console, we're going to call set to do item. All right, and then we pass in the data we are changing called value, like that. So with this in place, we can even type whatever you want here. So let's try to console log the state and see what we have anytime we make changes inside our test input. So for this, let me call this one read here. Then let me call this one walk. Then let's see console, where is it? Now as you can see, anytime you type a text, it display like that, read and walk. Good. So now you can see that we are binding our state to our text input. So the next question is that you want to keep track of all the pieces of state inside our console and display it here. So we need to manage that state too. So I'm going to make use of the same use state here like this, and then we get back these two things from this use state equal to that. And for this one, I'll call this one it can be anything. Let me call this one to-do list, and then the function to update called set to-do list. And remember, because we are going to manage a long list of to-dos, we cannot make use of a string or just an object, but instead an array. So we are going to get all this data here and then push it into the array. So we are going to create a function to do that, right? So let's call this function as cons add to do list, and then this function will not take anything. So what it's going to do is called the set to do list, and then for this it takes in an array, right? So we pass in an array, and then we take the initial state, you spread the to-do list, and then we append what we have inside our state like that. So with this in place, we are going to trigger that function whenever we click on this button, right? So anytime we click on this button, we are going to grab this piece of state and then push it into our state by using this set to-do list. So let's get that one done. So for this button, where is it? Instead of just console or something to the console, let's do something meaningful. So for this, we can call this function in two ways, whether by making use of add to do list, but the question is that you may ask yourself, this is a function, and a function we often call it like this, but if you do this one in this way, it will call by itself automatically. But we want to click the button before this function gets triggered. So because this is what a function, so this function is going to call it for us, but not us who is calling it. That is why we ignore the bracket like that. But if you want to bring the bracket, we can pass that function as an anonymous function like this, and then we are good to go. So either this one or this one, they are all the same. So with this in place, let's try to console log the to-do list item, right? So let me console log something and see that we have all the states being re-added in form. So let's try. Let me call this one even A. Let me call this one B. Let me hit C. Let's see the console what we have. Alright, I think we're not getting any meaningful here. I think something is wrong somewhere. So let me refresh again. I think it should work. Alright, so you have to get other pieces of state our function is calling correctly, y is not pushing to the array. Alright, so let's get let me add this one. Let me continue add it, and then let's see what we have. Alright, this is weird now. It's not pushing to the array. So let's see where the problem is. So we take all the to-do list item, and then we added the to-do item here. Alright, and inside our text, on change text, where is it? We pass in this one, and then for the onPress, we get that one done. So why is it so? Alright, so let's get continue and see what we have. Let's try to fix that. I think it's a bug. So everything is intact. We spread this one and add it. Alright, let's try one more time. Let me refresh again. Let me add this one D here. Enter DDD, whatever. I only see that it has been. Alright. Now as you can see, I need to refresh my Androids and routers and smooth. As you can see that we have been added to our state. So in the next video, we are going to take all this data and then loop through and display it like that inside our inside our React Native application. So the next video, that is what we are going to tackle. Thanks for watching.